150 feet, turn right onto Mount Hill Road.
Wonderful. Well, as I mentioned, I will be brief and we are recording. I have a few things to say, but the most important is the first one, which is one word: welcome. Welcome to Harvesting the Blessings, which is just like the rest of our pilgrimage, facilitated and created by Sister Susan. My name is Mark Piper. I am the Director for Ministry and Mission Advancement for the North American province of the Senecal Sisters. And I am very pleased that we've got a good turnout for this live, also recorded Harvesting the Blessings, where we're going to look back on the last 5 weeks together on this pilgrimage. And just a few other items. I will probably take my video off, but I will be participating primarily to make sure there aren't technical issues. So if you have questions, comments, concerns, you can either do the raise hand option or send it into the chat, and I'll be monitoring the chat throughout our approximately 90 minutes together. Enough about that. I'd like to turn it over to Sister Susan, who again was our pilgrim guide and traveling partner. As of 1 hour ago, for those who did record miles or kilometers, we recorded 3,807 miles. So maybe after this call, we'll get to the 4,200, or if you prefer, 6,127 kilometers. So our thanks to those who did want to participate in that regard. But I'm going to turn it over to Sister Susan. And once more, thank you for participating and welcome to this Harvesting the Blessings.
Sometimes you're out of the picture, but yeah.
So Sister Susan.
Come this way a little.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mark. But what Mark is being very modest, because after I put together the PowerPoint presentations, he and his friend worked very hard in coordinating it with the music. And he was the one that created all the emails that you received. So Mark, we owe you a debt of gratitude as well. And besides the fact, this was his idea. So we just want to tell you that we're really grateful for you as well. So we still have some people coming in, and I just got a chat that someone is here from West Africa. Whoever she is or he, could you raise your hand? Anybody? Right here? Maybe it's on the next page.
Yes, can you see me? No. Hello, Sister Susan. Greetings from Dakar.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Now I lost her. Where did she go? Anyway, she is with us from South Africa,
Still
right?
here.
Goodness gracious.
No, West Africa.
West Africa.
I'm in Senegal, but a Chicagoan, 100%, 100%.
Wonderful. Thank you. I'm glad you're in. And we have...
No, and thank you.
You're welcome. We also have Ann Powell, our Senecal sister, and she is in New Zealand. We have Angelina Villanueva, and she is in the Philippines. And let's see, we have Debbie Mioto, and she is in Vancouver. We have, who else have we other than the United States? Well, let's do the foreign lands first. Let's see if we have anyone else from a foreign land. Joanna is from Vancouver. And I think that's all I see. Anyway, who is from, let's say, Chicago? We have some folks from Chicago. We have folks from, let's see, we have folks from the Atlanta area. We have folks from Ronkonkoma area, Ronkonkoma, New York. We have folks from New Jersey. And do we have any folks from the Metairie area, Louisiana? Okay, we have folks from Minnesota. We do have folks from Sacramento. And where are they? Let's see. Anyway, did they get lost in the shuffle? Kathleen, yes, Kathleen is here. And she is with, let's see, Kathleen, yes, Kathleen is here. And she is with, let's see, Kathleen is with, 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 Ka Kathleen, unmute yourself. There, anyway, the two of them are our associates in Sacramento. And I'm trying to think if I miss anybody. Did I miss a state?
You missed Florida.
Oh, good gosh.
The great state of Florida.
How can I miss Florida? Florida, yes, okay.
And did you say Houston too? And Texas?
Texas.
Yes, Cynthia, Texas. We have folks in Texas and New York, of course. New York, of course.
And Iowa.
Iowa, wonderful.
Don't forget the tall corn state.
Well, we enjoy your corn.
Some of you do, yes.
Okay. Well, as far as I know, I think I've welcomed folks from states, from other countries. Thank you for being with us. This is wonderful. At the present moment, we're 31 and we have 3 folks trying to get on, but I think perhaps we should start. And what I would like to start with, first of all, is just telling you what a joy it was for me to prepare our pilgrimage and to have you all part of it for the past 5 weeks. For me, it was a wonderful opportunity to remember. You know, remember means to and then member, to put together all that makes sense for us as we continue to walk our journeys through life, particularly in the shadow of Mother Teresa, Father Term, and all the Senecal sisters, auxiliaries, and associates that have gone before us. So I do want to welcome you and thank you. And what I do want to say is today is a free-for-all. We're going to begin with a PowerPoint presentation, reminiscing and remembering where we have been on our pilgrimage. And I hope that that would arouse memories and feelings and questions and comments. And actually, I believe we're all open for everything, and certainly I am. I don't pretend to know everything. I know what I know from research and from study, from reading and from being in the places where we went in person. So, but all of you have experiences as well. So I hope you will feel free to share your experiences with all of us. That would be wonderful. So right now, I would like to invite you to sit back, relax, and simply enjoy what I've prepared for you. And I will give a word or two during the presentation so that if some of you missed one or the other, at least you'll know what part of France we're in. Is everyone ready to fly off back to Rome? Not Rome, France? All right, let's go then. Can you all see it? Mark, can you see it?
Yes, I can.
All right. Our first stop in remembering our pilgrimage is that of Lima, the birthplace of Marie Victoire Coudert on February 1st, 1805. En route to her home, there, that's better. So our first stop is at Lima, the birthplace of Mother Teresa, previously known as Marie Victoire Coudert. She was born in 1805 on February 1st. En route to her home, we passed through some beautiful scenic mountains, valleys, rivers. Sablières is a small hamlet in the Ardèche region in southeastern France. And it is here where the Coudert family settled. The property of Lima was given to an ancestor of Marie Victoire in the 1600s, given to her ancestor in gratitude by the Duke of Joyeuse. While we visited her home, we were taken by the stairs, the original stairs leading to the loft above the barn, today a chapel, to the chapel interior as well as to the oven. The source is still running today as it ran in the 1600s. When Marie Victoire was born, her father planted a sequoia tree. Most probably he purchased it from traders coming from the States. We next visited Le Plagnel, the birthplace of John Peter Stephen Terme. He was born in 1791 on Christmas Day. We don't know his exact home, but we do know it was probably one like we see. Le Plagnel is a valley. And from this slide, what we could see is the bells from the chapel, the church in Le Plagnel. It's a simple church, but it does boast of being the tallest structure in all of Le Plagnel. And so we have the interior of the church, which is quite quaint, simple, and welcoming. And here we have, as we saw during our pilgrimage, the casket containing the remains of Father Terme and notices of gratitude. Lalouvesc was our next stop of our congregation. And here we see the town with the spires of the church standing tall and straight. We reached then the doors welcoming us into Maison Thérèse Coudert, originally known as St. Regis House. And there we went into the chapel. And here we have an image of the chapel as it was in Mother Teresa's day, after it was built under her leadership, and as it was today. And beneath the side altar, we paused, we prayed before the tomb of Mother Teresa. And here we have a view of the original kitchen and as it was when it was restored. And this is the garden as it might have looked in Mother Teresa's time as she tilled the garden, and as it looked when we closed our house in Lalouvesc. From the garden, we saw the town cemetery where we have sisters buried. And then we went to St. John Francis Regis Basilica. And in this tiny casket are the remains of St. John Francis Regis on the side altar to the right of the main altar. As you look at the main altar, if you look to the left, you will see an opening. Mother Teresa's new home is awaiting her presence. Look to the far left. You see the plaque saying Bonté, goodness. And so were we to go to Lalouvesc in person today, we would see Mother Teresa in her new home. as she is laid to rest in St. John Francis Regis for all to venerate and to whom we can pray. Our last stop was Lyon, a metropolitan city. Originally, it was a little town, a Roman town, in what is called Fauvière, which means the old town. Our first stop was at the Basilica of Notre de Fauvière. It's a majestic structure, and if you were to stand by it, you would see a beautiful cascade of Lyon. And so our last stop is at the Cenacle in Fauvière. Our first stop is in the chapel, and here you see it as it was when it was constructed in the middle 1800s and as it is today. The tribune, of course, has special meaning to us because it was here in her latter years that Mother Teresa prayed, adored her divine master. Here we have remnants, heirlooms of our founding sisters. And what we have is a bookcase with original handwritten pamphlets, souvenirs of the past. And into Mother Teresa's room, her bedroom, we walk into the sacred place. In this slide, you can see Mother Teresa's wheelchair, cane, and the hooks on the wall which she hung her habit. Here, we can glimpse at the bookcase holding items that were either Mother Teresa's or that she used. And we took a stroll through the garden, the beautiful garden in back of the house. And certainly I have memories of those delicious cherries. Our Lady is in the garden, in the center. The famous rabbit hutch is a place where every visitor wants her or his photo. And at one time, a little rabbit grew there, ate there, lived there, but he has since disappeared into the hands of the eternal God. I offer you a photo of two very special sisters that inspired me to delve into our congregation's story and to research definitely what I didn't know before. And it's a thrill for me to share it with you. But Mary L'Amour and Paul de Lassus have had a big impact in my life as a Senecal sister, and I'm forever grateful for giving me a thirst of their love for our story. And so with that quick remembrance of where we've been the past 5 weeks, it's your time to speak. Your time to share what surprised you, what influenced you, what struck you, or questions you may have, or comments you'd like to give. And all I would ask you to do is, if you wish to speak, to just raise your hand so that it's visible, and I will be happy to call upon you, or Mark will be happy to call upon you.
I'd be happy to help out.
Thank you. So if you are talking, please unmute yourself. And then after you finish talking, mute yourself back. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Marsha. I'm in the Finger Lakes area of New York State. And I just want to say thank you to everyone. It was wonderful realizing there were so many, engaged in the reflections and the prayers and perhaps the walking. And I've really enjoyed the companionship that we've shared over these 5 weeks. So thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marcia. It is wonderful to see you.
Looks like Mary Ferreira has her hand raised.
Hi there. Susan, I popped this question to you via email, but it seems that a lot of communities have that same territory, specifically because, I was Marist laity, that Fauvier was very important to us because that's where the Fauvier Pledge was made that initiated the Marist community. So I guess I was wondering, what is the big attraction in that area? I know that just looking at the pictures, I felt that they were very peaceful. And I just really wanted to sit there in those gardens. And the stone houses just blew me away. Although I do like my creature comforts, so I don't know if that would work for me. But what is the significance of that area? What is drawing, or what drew everybody to that area?
Thank you for asking that question. That area is actually called the Holy Hill. Mm-hmm. And it was previously, I'm trying to remember what year, but way before Jesus was born. It was settled by the Romans. And today, as we saw in our pilgrimage in Lyon, in Fauvier, the arena still stands and people still sit there and they listen to concerts and enjoy the pleasures of it. The Romans established Fauvier as their home plate because it is so high up that you can overlook the entire valley, as you saw from the picture of Lyon, the city, the metropolitan city. So it was no wonder that they made a fortress there to protect their entities and their people. And so that was the beginning of Old Lyon, is what we call it, Old Lyon. And when we founded Lyon, and actually right now it escapes my mind, but it was probably in the 1830s or 40s, I think it was 40s. There were already some religious communities there. And the reason is there was a tiny chapel there called in honor of Our Lady. It is not the Basilica that is there now, but if you were on our pilgrimage for Lyon, you saw pictures of the structure of the chapel of Our Lady. And it was very, very small. And many people went there to pray. It was only later on in the 1800s that people began to need a basilica in which to thank Mary for her protection. Now you might ask, what protection? The French Revolution was long gone, and that is true. However, there was a plague. I guess you would call it the Black Death. And people promised that if they did not get the plague, if Mary would protect them from the plague, they would build a structure in her honor. And they kept that promise. Not only did they keep that promise, but every year, one day a year, they have processions, candlelight processions, and festivities in honor of Our Lady. As a result of building a greater church added on to the original structure, many congregations began to settle around that church. And among them were the Senecal Sisters, but other religious women and men congregations. Interestingly enough, the Archbishop of Lyon also has his residence there. So it became like a conclave of religious homes.
Mhm.
So does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, Janet?
I was struck by the beauty and simplicity of Panama, where Mother Teresa was born. She came from a farming family. They had sheep, I guess, and other animals, goats, and they tilled the soil and their own vegetables and fruits. And I'm a farmer's daughter on both sides of my family. My mother and my father came from farming families, and I lived on a farm until I was 13. And so that resonated with me. Even the house, which was very different from my grandparents' house on one side and the other, and the house that I lived in. Certainly the farmhouses of today are more modern than they were in that time. But the same ideas were there, the big kitchen. My one grandmother had a wood burning stove, and the other one had more modern and a modern appliance, and so on. And it brought back such memories of my childhood and the peacefulness of growing up on a farm. I didn't have a lot of the farming responsibilities that my parents did when they were my age, but I did have a lot of the fruits of their labor. And so I enjoyed that. Always a big, family table. There were 7 of us, and I thought everybody lived that way until much later in my life. And I was struck by the way both Father Term and Mother Teresa bloomed where they were planted. And when God called them to other areas, they went. But it was always within, especially for Father Term, within the Ardèche itself. He wanted to minister and bring God's love to his, to use a phrase, his own people, the people of his village, the people of his area. And Mother Teresa wanted to bring the love of God to the women pilgrims who were not treated so nicely when the men came for the pilgrimages, and she saw a need there. And so asked Father Term if they might not do that. They decided together to establish a house for that. And I just, they saw a need, they asked God's grace, they waited for direction, they took care of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the way I try to live my life. So I very much admire both of them and look up to them and pray to them, and look for their humility and their openness, their receptiveness to God to be part of my life as well. And I am very, very grateful for this virtual pilgrimage, because I could never have done the actual physical pilgrimage. And I'm so happy for this opportunity. So I really appreciate, Sister Susan, that you and Mark put this together, and I was able to be here. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Janet, very much. Carol?
Carol, I've asked you to unmute. There we go.
Carol, before you begin, let me just say this, Mark. Mary Kay is trying very hard to get on from New Zealand.
She keeps coming in and out.
Okay, all right. Yeah. Okay, Carol, I'm sorry.
Okay. I just want to say the first thing. Time I ever went to Lalouvesc, I was going for a special retreat in prayer, asking for direction from God and Mother Teresa with a very specific project that a small group of us were trying to get started. And I was in the old Senegal before they made all the changes in the building and started. There was all the black wood, the black oak, you know, everything. And it was dark and gloomy looking, but it was still very beautiful. And you walk down the halls and there was darkness all around you. The lights would come on eventually. And I saw that transformation from that house into what it eventually became. And it really was a drawing card for so many people. But the other thing I wanted to say was, a couple of the sisters said to me, you must go to Lyon. And there, if you think you experience Mother Teresa and the graces of God at Lalouvesc, go to Lyon. You will profoundly feel her presence. And that was indeed what I experienced. Her spirit and her love spreads out through that whole Senegal there and all across that hillside. And going into the garden, you are very much aware of Mother Teresa's presence. And that rabbit hutch at the time that I went still had a rabbit in it. And there, all the fruit trees and everything that was there, it was just like, this was where Mother Teresa was. Not quite the same, but this is where Her Holiness touched and graced everything with her mere presence. And I was so sorry that I couldn't be there when her body was transferred from the house in Lalouvesc to the cathedral, but nevertheless, the pictures that were taken of everything as her body was being carefully dressed, undressed and dressed and so on. And that whole layout of that whole scene, it was such a magnificent, such a deeply personal experience. And I think so many of us felt so drawn even more deeply into what Senegal means for us today, even as here in the United States, Senegal has become much smaller. We auxiliaries are down to a very small group, and we are still here. We will be together until the very end, whatever that means. And thank you, Susan, with great heart and joy for all that you did to prepare this.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Looks like Maureen just unmuted herself. Maureen, did you have something to share?
Let me try. Is the mic okay? Is this?
Maureen, I was having a hard time hearing that.
I'm very grateful, Susan, for this. It's such a reminder of having. Okay.
Maureen, we were having a hard time with the audio. If you wanted to type your comment or question, I'd be happy to read it for the group. If you put it in the chat, we'll make sure it gets read aloud.
Okay, that'll be better.
Thank you, and sorry for the technical difficulties.
Maybe we could try a little later and it might come through. Angelina has her hand up.
I'm very grateful to you, Susan, for this pilgrimage. The Lalouvesc and Lions and even Lemas was familiar to me, but I didn't know about Planyal and Father Term's place because I wasn't there. But yeah, Lions, of course, is the most significant for me. I remember that we went to Lions using a funiculum, this thing of, you know, you rode something that kind of like was a cable car that you went up. Is that still part of it? And then behind the food year, isn't there some kind of St. Bartholomew Street?
Yes.
Where Mother Teresa actually lived for a long time because, you know,
I don't want to hear it.
Anyway, I just wanted to ask you about that because I remember Josephine Desimoni did some research and showed that part of where Mother Teresa had lived.
Yes, St. Bartholomew Road, a street is still there. And the story right off the top of my head is Pauline Jericho. Those of you who have read our history, Pauline Jericho was a pious, wealthy woman. She was a laywoman, never married. She really gave herself and devoted to it, the life of the church as it was in those days. And we have to remember that the early 1800s, France was still struggling to repair itself from the French Revolution, which ended in 1805, but it was securely ended in 1805, that's right. So anyway, Pauline Jericho was very good friends with Father Term. Unfortunately, she would tell Father Term he should be doing a lot with this one, that one, and the other one. This thing, that thing, and the other thing. She very much wanted to have the cenacle by her side. She lived on St. Bartholomew Road. And so she purchased a place for our sisters to begin a retreat house there. Up to that point, we were only in the Ardèche region. Lyon is not in the Ardèche region, in the sense that it's all of our other homes were in the Lalouvesc circumference. And Lyon was the first house to be built, to be had outside of it. And Ghislaine Coté, who is a great historian in Lyon, does tell me that she really believes that Lyon is the mother house of our universal international congregation. Because while Lalouvesc was parochial in that region, from Lyon, we went to England, we went to the United States, we went to Ireland, we went to, you know, different places in France. So it expanded the congregation, not just a parochial or diocesan congregation. Well, Mother Contenay, Charlotte, what's her name? Somebody help me with that. I think it was Contenay, yes. Mother Contenay was the General Superior. Now, when we say General Superior, she was a General Superior for a handful of sisters, not 200, 300, maybe 20, if she was lucky. She, Pauline Jericho, bent the ear of Mother Contenay, and yes, we will open a house in Lyon. And Pauline Jericho purchased this home that we might begin our ministry. Unfortunately, it was unsuitable for a retreat house. Actually, a stream ran under it. Now we have to remember all the homes were stone, heated only by a fireplace here, there, and everywhere. The house was very damp. very cold, particularly in the winter months. Only 2 sisters lived there, Mother Teresa and a lay sister, a coadjutor sister. They did try to make our ministry go. They worked very hard to lure women, but it was very hard because it was unpleasant in that house. It's interesting that if you go to that street today, Pauline Jericho's home is enshrined. She has been declared by the Vatican as venerable. And if anybody remembers the first pilgrimage in 2005, Susan was very upset when she saw the display of love that people have for Pauline Jericho, because she really caused a lot of problems for Mother Teresa, because Father Turn would listen to her rather than Mother Teresa, except that he did listen to Mother Teresa when she said, we've got to do something about maintaining recollection in our home. Women must pray, not talk. I'm just paraphrasing this. So anyway, Pauline Jericho is very much endeared by the French people, and she did do good work. She is the one who began the perpetual rosary. Somebody put my name in, and I get that magazine every month. And every month I get it, I think of her, and I'm sad to say I skim through it and toss it aside. But I can't deny that she wasn't a holy woman, but she was also eccentric. She gave all her money away to the poor, to religious congregations. As a result, she died a pauper. So she wanted us to stay there, but Mother Teresa, in her wisdom, knew this was not appropriate. And she hears that the property in Fauvier, where we now are, is available for sale, and it has a little gray house on it. So she writes to Mother Cantonet and says, I think this would be better for us. We must buy it. And for those of us who know our story, she took the initiative of working with the owner and convincing him he should sell the house to us. And yes, he sold his property and the little gray house. But the difficulty with the little gray house is that we could not move in immediately because the tenants who were renting it refused to move for a year. So that meant an additional year for our sisters who lived in St. Bartholomew. Now the houses in that area are still there from the time of Mother Teresa, but no one seems to know which was the house that we had, that Mother Teresa lived in. Mary Lou Moore didn't know, Paul de Lassus didn't know, and Ghislaine Cote doesn't know. And so it's just a mystery, but yes. And then we have the story that our sisters by night, when they could take possession of the property, would go at night carrying goods, pots and pans, dishes, linens, up to the gray house in a little cart so that Pauline Jericho would not see it. Well, needless to say, Pauline Jericho was not happy when we took possession of that property, nor was her cousin. And they were both wealthy women. And so they had a bitter taste for us. But as God has it, God works through all kinds of situations. So does that answer your question about St. Bartholomew? I don't hear any yes or no, but I'm going to presume.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Angelina. It's an interesting story. Human nature gets involved very much in our foundation of Lyon. Yes, Anne.
Great. Thank you, Susan. I love how that cynical story just pours out of you as you talk then, replying to Angie's question. Thank you. For me, the last few weeks have been a really lovely pilgrimage of meaning, and certainly stirred up the what I like to call the dynamic memory of the times I've had the privilege of visiting some of those places. And I got so excited in Lalouvesc when I could work out from the pictures the shutters of the bedrooms that I'd slept in at different times, and the pathways and the steps in Lyon and the garden. Yeah, I felt a real joy and gratitude welling up in me as I saw those places again, because as we all know, probably none of us are likely to get there again. Yeah, so I felt even the landscape did something for me again, because I love the kind of ruggedness and wildness of some of that part of Lalouvesc and the Ardèche. And I remembered, Susan, the last time I was there was actually with you and Barbara and Pat from Ireland and Michelle Lafferty from here. We had a gathering of what were we called? Something about new forms of belonging anyway.
Yeah,
and we had an overnight at Lalouvesc, and it was such a precious time. And I remember I decided crazily to try and stay up all night because I wanted to watch the dawn and welcome the dawn from my little bedroom that looked out over the hills. Yes, I just feel really grateful for what it evoked in me once again. As I say, the grace of those places, the grace of the place and the grace of the landscape meant a lot to me. And yeah, I know it did also for Kathleen, who's in our community and who's not joining us this morning, but she had also been there many times. And I know for all of us, it really stirred up yeah, gratefulness and joy. So thank you, Mark, and thank you, Susan. Yeah, and it's wonderful to see everyone here. Well, it's Monday morning in New Zealand, whatever time it is for all of you. But it's very special in this era when we are not able to travel. So thank you.
It's so good to have you with us, Anne. And I do remember that overnight at Lalouvesc. And I got the picture of Mother Teresa in her coffin. Do you remember?
I do.
Nobody wanted it. I took it. I still have it. Anyone else? Kathy?
Yeah, Susan, thank you for all that you have done and brought back the history for us in a living way. A memory came to me in one of the Sundays, the one that we went to Lalouvesc. It brought back my international renewal. For those of you who don't know, the sisters are invited as part of their ongoing life in the Senegal to experience a few months in Europe at our historical places. And so there were 15 of us that were from all over the world who came together for this international renewal. And we were in Lyon and we traveled by bus. Now this was not what you'd call your Greyhound air-conditioned bus with the bathroom in the back. It was a rather rustic bus that we all got into and traveled on those windy, windy roads up to Lalouvesc. And so by the time we arrived, we were rather tired, but we were also quite excited about finally coming to this sacred place. So the door of the bus opened and the 15 of us walked out slowly, one by one, through those beautiful wood doors into the courtyard. And one of the sisters opened the door into the chapel. And what my memory is that I can still feel in my body is there was absolute silence. Not one of us spoke a word, but we all walked in silence up to, on the right side, to the tomb, to the body of Mother Teresa. And it was like we all knew this was terribly holy ground for each of us. And then all of a sudden, in a quiet little voice, we began to sing Magnificat. You know, the Tese one that it's around and it goes around. So there we were singing in 3-part harmony, this Magnificat, praising God for Mère Therese, praising God for this special place, and that we had the opportunity to go there and to be there together. So even for that moment alone, Susan, I thank you for bringing back that memory to my heart and to me. It's one that I treasure.
Thank you, Kathy. Cynthia?
Okay, there we are. I've had the fortune of making all of the 4 pilgrimages, and then Charles and I made 2 of them together. So it's been so amazing. It's like a wrap up of what we did. And it was so bittersweet because they were so special to us, but now they're not available. But one thing that Charles and I were talking about at lunch that really took us by surprise, you know, together, and it was just awesome, stunning, was Mother Teresa's tree. And I remember at one of our pilgrimages, at least, all of us pilgrims circled the tree and joined hands. And I don't even know if we connected, but I mean, the tree is that big. And I mean, we had, I'd probably say at least 20 on pilgrimage, but that's such a neat memory for us, that huge tree that's lasted, that her father thought to, or the tradition was that they would plant a tree at the birth of a child. So it was just, I mean, I've never been able to touch something that big, you know, than that tree. So it was gorgeous, and you know, the reddish hue. So we really enjoyed that, and it's been bittersweet in that, as someone said, we won't be able to go back, and it's not there anymore. I mean, the tree is there, but doing the pilgrimage, you know, like we did. So this has been a wonderful time of reminiscing, and then asking God to really enjoy the present moment and savor it, because you never know what it's going to be like later on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. Yes, we were about 15 people with our arms outstretched as far as we could go around the trunk of this sequoia tree. But then I got very curious. Sequoia trees only grow in Northern California. And so I couldn't imagine how in the world did this sequoia tree, even though it might have been a little seedling, you know, how did it get into a remote village like Sablier? And so Sister Barbara Young and I had a fortunate opportunity to go to the Sequoia National Park in North California. And one of the first things I asked the rangers was, I have a question for you. And I shared with him about this sequoia tree growing on a mountaintop in the middle of the Ardèche region mountains. And he said, oh, that's not unusual. He said, the 1800s were a time of great sharing and of great transportation of goods, trading, east to west, north to south. And by means of making money, people in Northern California would make seedlings that you can even buy today there, by the way, if you go into their souvenir shop, and probably brought them into France to be sold. Somehow, Mother Teresa's father, he was well known in the whole area. In fact, he was the mayor for many, many years. He got his hands on it. I don't think he knew what he was doing, because if you look at that tree today, and maybe I could show you the tree again, just looking at it, it's humongous. It stands out above all other trees on that mountaintop. That's how tall it is. And when you take a picture under it, you're like this little minuscule dime. But in the middle of that trunk, there is a deep red scar, a deep red line, a deep red indentation. And when I look at that deep red indentation, that to me is the breath of life that we all enjoy from the birth of Mother Teresa. That deep red line reminds me of her act of surrender to her God. You know, it could remind me of blood, actually. That's what it does remind me of. The blood of life of our Senecal congregation, of our Senecal friends worldwide. So that tree is very well visited. People come from all over just to see it because it's a novelty. But the ranger also told me that there are other places on other mountains in France where people have planted sequoia trees through the years. And so they too are beginning to propagate. But originally, only in Northern California is the climate and the soil enough for a sequoia tree to grow beyond anyone's expectations. It's a redwood. Thank you for reminding us about that.
Mary Kay?
Thank you. Just want to thank you, Susan, as well. But I want to show you this. On the renewal that I was on, Mimi, when we were at Lalouvesc, she carved us each a piece of bark from the forest. It actually was illegal for me to bring it home to New Zealand because you're not allowed to bring wood in like that. But it survived all these years. That was 1982. And that was very precious. And the other, as you were talking to, I just wanted to show you my picture of Mother Teresa, because she's surrounded by shells from here. And it's just a word that you've made alive for me in this time. Just some of the memories that I think it was Anne who said we won't have a chance again to visit with the pandemic that's going on. But it's just been such a grace. And also I was thinking as I sat in the room of Mother Teresa, Michelle Lafferty in particular, when she came back, our Senecal companion, she had such a grace sitting in Mother Teresa's beside her bed, her bedroom. So, and for me to revisit again in my heart, the Tribune at Lyon meant so much to me because I was so graced there with her gift of goodness. And it just feels like goodness in this call is pouring out with that beautiful charism that we share. So all our love from here.
Thank you, Mary, and so glad you and Anne are with us. Evie, unmute yourself.
Hello, everyone. This is wonderful. I'm Ev Dagan from Chicago, 513. And it was wonderful just to see Mary Kay. We have a little history. It goes way back. Anyway, I wanted to share my experience. I was only in Lalouvesc once, and that was during my international renewal, which was in 1984. In later years, I never had the opportunity to go on one of Susan's wonderful pilgrimages for all sorts of ministerial and other responsibilities, but I was always a little envious because I know what a wonderful experience you gave the people who could go on one of your pilgrimages, Sue. But anyway, in 1984, my renewal group, we went in the fall. We were one of the few groups to go in the fall. Usually people went in the spring because it was the anniversary time at La Pagnol, where they were putting the remains in that special that you saw in the video a little while ago, and also on the pilgrimage in the wall. So of their church in La Pagnol. I just remember that day. It was kind of a fall, November-ish kind of day. We went again by bus, and I remember the people, the people, and it wasn't a vast crowd because they're, you know, those villages in the Ardèche don't have vast crowds, but the people were so proud of Father Term, and to have their little church have this special place to reverence his remains, and they were just so welcoming and so simple. And you know, the fact that we were Senecal sisters, that was a big deal, that we should come to their little town. And it's just one of a very happy memory of my one and only time to be at Lalouvesc and La Planière and Lamas. And I really think of all the places our renewal group to, I think the one that touched my heart the most was Lamas. I think her birthplace, and that being in that little chapel and being in her home and sitting on that staircase was just such a wonderful time. So because I've never been on one of Sue's pilgrimages, to have this pilgrimage and all those wonderful pictures, Sue and Mark, thank you so much for making this possible, because it just did refresh my fading memory as my years go on here of all the wonderful places I did see and experience in 1984, which is a few years ago. So thank you, Sue and Mark, and it's been wonderful to share it with all the rest of you too.
Thank you, Evie, for so much. Catherine?
Yes, I guess, you know, Susan, I did go on the pilgrimage with you, and it was just such a privilege. But I think what I experienced in this virtual pilgrimage is your gift as a storyteller. It just was exquisite to listen to you and how you drew us in to these places. And then today, even in answering our questions. And so I'm just so grateful for that. And the other thing that I'm grateful for is to you, Mark, for incorporating the steps piece of it into this, whether we really make it the whole way or not. But I think for me, when I spent time in the Ardèche, you know, I had the privilege of being there a couple of times, it was the amount of distance that people needed to walk, like St. John Francis Regis, the miles he covered as he went about preaching in that region. And then, you know, Mother Teresa, you know, how far they had to take her when she was a day old to be baptized, you know, whether they were in some kind of a conveyance or whatever they did. And then even when she entered, it was no small distance. So I don't know, you know, if she walked or what she did, but there was something for me about, you know, just imagining myself through the story and the images, you know, walking that beautiful rugged landscape. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Catherine. Jane? Unmute yourself, please.
That.
Good.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, the word that has come to me, it came to me while we were doing the virtual tour. I've not been there. The closest I've been was with Luciana, my spiritual director, other Senecals. We did a 10-day retreat in Versailles. The word is romance. And I say that because I feel so connected to you and to the other sisters. You know, losing Ronki was horrific for a lot of us. It was my second home. but the trip brought us together for me, and it made more real the solidarity that we share. And as rugged as, you know, walking in the wooden shoes that they did, and it was, to me, it was so beautiful. God's gift of that countryside. So, and everywhere really, but I think the fact that we did it together as community was what touched me and made it feel romantic. You know, God's love was in all of it, in your voice and your storytelling, and yeah, and the fact that we were together doing it, I think it bolstered me up. It bolstered me up.
I am so glad.
I needed that, and I thank you again. God bless.
Thank you, Jane, so much. Debbie?
Yes, I just want to, you know, say the same. We're so happy that you did this, and it did bring us all closer together. And to me, to relive that wonderful trip in 2005 with you, it was just amazing. And you did it so lovely. And I like the little, the step program too. That was a real nice addition to get us going in this COVID times, and just to have this to look forward to. It's really amazing, sister. And I know how much work you must have put in, and Mark too. So I just want to thank you again for doing all this. It was great.
Thank
Really
you,
enjoyed
Debbie.
it.
Yes, Ryan.
Yeah, good morning to all of you.
Good afternoon to you. What time is it there? We're in Singapore now.
4 a.m. 5 a.m. 5 a.m. It's good to see all of you. Wonderful, you know. I just want to share the blessing of the memories of walking the footsteps of Mother Teresa, you know, especially the Lamas picnic that we had sitting on the staircase. Some of you were with me in this pilgrimage, and so wonderful to have it at the right time, you know, at this time of celebrating, you know, celebrating in the sense of in our own staying home, you know, to walk that footsteps. The memory of sitting on the steps of Lamas in the picnic with all of you, you know, just the sense and the smell of the water, the fireplace brings memory. And also for me, a very significant is at Lalouvesc, you know, looking at the body of Mother Teresa, sitting there quietly praying, led me also to remember Mother Teresa and all of us, the Seneca family throughout the world. And it's so wonderful to sit in the room of Mother Teresa, you know, at Leon. All these memories bring back, and the unity in communion with all of us, and the collective steps that all of us still, you know, the collective steps of this pilgrimage that we still walk together, even though we cannot walk physically. So many places in the time of prayer, the tears and memories of love, you know, the difficult journey of Mother Teresa and all of us, you know, but yet the faith and the surrendering and the goodness of this pilgrimage is that which hold us together. So I want to thank you, Susan and Mark and all.
Thank
who
you,
knows?
Fran.
We may continue it one sometime. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Good to see all of you.
Karen? And then Lena. Where's Karen? I lost her. Did we lose Karen?
I'm having some problems with my audio. I'm going to mute.
Okay. I don't see her. Do you, has anyone? Oh,
she was having some issues with her
I
audio. So again, Karen, if you have a comment or question, you're welcome to put it in the chat, and I would be happy to provide it to the group and Sister Susan.
Thank you. Lena, you had your hand up.
Yes, Sister Susan, thank you very much for this opportunity to be with you and with everybody. When I saw Sister Fran talk, I remembered we were roommates before when we had the pilgrimage. It was so good to be with everybody, remembering the pilgrimage. The thing that I could really remember is when I was in the room of Mother Teresa, I was so curious. I was alone and I was praying and I felt her presence. But I was attracted to that small table and I pulled it and the drawer. And so I thought that was her writing, her penmanship. And it was so nice. And then all of a sudden, Sister Gertrude came in and no, do not do that. And so I closed it. I said sorry, and I stayed for a while. And I said sorry to Mother Teresa because I tried to look at the drawer and I thank her. Yeah, it was. I felt her presence there. Yeah, and thank you, Sister Susan, for bringing us back to that place, a really holy place for me. And,
thank you, Lena, for being with us.
And thank you. I saw you that you are okay now. Thank you to everybody. It's nice to be with you.
And it's good to be with you. Thank you.
This is Johanna in Vancouver.
Yes, Joanna.
I would like to acknowledge the grace and the gift of being able to virtually re-walk this pilgrimage, go to those memorable places, and seeing the places again also stimulates the feelings, the emotions, the memories of being in those places. And some of you here today were on the same pilgrimage I was. Some others that I was part of the group of are not here today. But it's a wonderful memory and a re-walking and a reliving. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. We're very glad to have you with us. Someone else had her hand up before and I failed to see it. Is there anyone else who would like to have the floor? You're welcome, and we're happy to receive you. Cynthia?
I would like to share this memento that you and Sister Barbara gave us, one of the pilgrimages. And it says the prayer, Mother Teresa, may he deign to give all of us the grace to make good use of these little pinpricks which we meet on our way. Mother Teresa, 28th of December, 1869. And on the back is bark from the sequoia tree. Not that I know you and Barbara didn't pull it off the tree; it had fallen on the ground. But that's so neat that I've got some of the sequoia tree here too. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
And as Joanna in Vancouver, I also remember. I was on a pilgrimage with Cynthia and Charles as well, and Maureen Reimer to
and others. But the time I went was 2014. And you gave us some cards that had taped on the back pieces of the chair in Mother Teresa's room, the chair where she sat and prayed. And it was like a rattan chair, or and it was old, so it was rather fragile and pieces were falling off it. So you got some pieces and taped them to the back of cards and gave them to us so that we have mementos of that room here with us.
Third-class relic.
Right.
Yes, that's true. I did not take these pieces off of Mother Teresa's wheelchair. The seat of Mother Teresa's wheelchair was really straw, kind of like the Amish chairs. And anyway, I was praying in Mother Teresa's room and I saw something on the floor under the chair. I thought it was a piece of dust. So Susan's going to clean the piece of dust. And instead, they were all little pieces of the straw that are falling down. They now have it covered with plastic. But there were all these little pieces. So I gathered them all up. And I said, oh my goodness, you know, this is a third-class relic. It touched her body. And so you're right. I did take those pieces and put them in back of that, of the cards that I had given you. You're right. I had forgotten that. Yes, Janet.
I believe it was the 2014 pilgrimage that I was slated to go on. I signed up for it, my deposit down, etc. And as time went on, my body was telling me more and more that I couldn't make it. I get around with the walker, and so some good days, some bad days, you know, that kind of thing. And I was going through a lot of pain management issues. And finally, when it came time to either you're going to pay the end of your ticket or you need to back out. So I prayed a lot about it and I had to back out. There was no way I could handle it physically. And I was so disappointed. Oh, so absolutely bereft that I could not go on this pilgrimage. And then here this comes along. And I never thought I'd have the ability to do any of this. And this is such a gift. It's you know, a desire of my heart that I've had for many years. And I never had any way to realize it. But you've given that to me. So I'm extremely grateful for that.
I'm so glad, Janet. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to have a word?
Looks like Helen maybe has a hand up.
Helen.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Helen.
Well, that's okay. I had put the celebrations symbol up, so that could have been confusing. As everyone's talking, I was thinking about the delightful part. I believe I was probably on the first pilgrimage. And I remember, Susan, our going into Lyon and having the opportunity to visit Mother Teresa's room. What I remember so dearly was that we were there, and probably being the first time, there weren't things set up yet. So we went into Lyon, and I remember you saying, into Bouvier, and remember you saying, I'm gonna go ask the sisters if maybe we could go in, and I'm gonna see if we can get each one of you to have 5 minutes alone in the room. And so you succeeded. And we all had an opportunity to spend 5 minutes in that room. And the other thing that was just so amazing to me was that when we did do that, since it hadn't been a routine of people visiting, things were not locked up in the room yet in order to preserve them. So when we managed to go into the room, we were also able to handle the things that were Mother Teresa's, you know, inside of the cabinets. And I remember just feeling what a privilege that was, knowing that usually that's not something that can happen. So it was great to be able to be on that first round before things were put into a better format.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you so much for Barbara having created and put so much energy into making these pilgrimages possible for all of us.
Well, you were on the first one, I remember, and I do remember a little chaos about being in Mother Teresa's room. So I made a schedule so that everybody would have at least 5 minutes. And I think, was it 5 or 10? Do you recall, Helen?
I think it was 5.
5, okay, whatever it was.
Still precious, they were still precious.
Yes, and I think we were about in the around 30 people. It was a large one. And there was one among us who defied the rule. And it was quite difficult to convince her that there was a line outside of Mother Teresa's room waiting to go in. And I felt like a policewoman, but it all worked out just fine. And people were so grateful to be able to touch her crucifix, touch her bed, touch her kneeler, touch the fireplace, which kept her warm in the cold winter nights. And I found it a great joy to touch the latch on the window that opened up the window, because I thought, I bet many a day she stood here looking outside from this window. So thank you for bringing back that memory.
One of the things that I remember inside that cabinet was the small book that she would carry in her pocket to be able to follow her own spiritual movement throughout the day. And so out of that experience, I periodically will gift someone, usually it's with the associates, but with other persons who are familiar with Mother Teresa, just a little book, so that if they, in memory of her, of that little booklet, just because of the joy. It's usually purple that I pick up.
That's great. Good. Well, is there anyone else who would like to have a last word? Can you believe that it is, what time have I?
And I might have one more comment if you've got
one more comment. Lena?
Yeah, I saw the comment of Mark about the mileage that we tried to come up to reach to Lalouvesc. Yeah, because the first week when we did that, I tried to do the walking just around the village to see how fast and how long I could last. But I just was able to make only a little over 1 kilometer. And I was so happy sending it to Mark. And then I stopped. But I accumulated my mileage during the time. And then this last week, I sent my mileage. I think I had 14 kilometers. What about that, Mark? What did we arrive at? Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And thanks for those who are participating in that. And we didn't want to be, exclusionary. Certainly it was not required to do this. And when we originally had the idea back in the dead of winter, and at least in the United States, COVID was in a much worse position than it is today. We were trying to get people moving. And so for those who were able in any way to partake, even if you're in a wheelchair moving down the block, that counts. But we had, as of about 30 minutes before we started the call, I wrote it down. Of course, I've been taking notes. There it is. 3,807 miles, or approximately 6,127 kilometers were recorded. So we'll see if a couple other stragglers upload their miles or kilometers, again, depending on your time zone, this evening into this tomorrow morning. So we'll make it close. But again, the point was less the actual mileage, although we thought that might be a nice component, because part of a pilgrimage is quite literally the journey in a literal sense. and trying to bridge the gap between this virtual reality that we're all in right now and the literal, physical pilgrimage. So 3,807 miles or 6,127 kilometers. So we'll see where we're at in the morning when I check again. So it'll be close. And then that reminds me, Wilma put something in the chat, and she wanted to share her gratitude to Sister Susan and to all of you, and that it was a good experience. And then she had issues with the form. So my apologies to anyone who had issues with the Google form. I was trying to do something somewhat simple for folks, but for those who were able to do that, I'm glad you did. And for those who couldn't physically participate, I hope that we didn't make it an overbearing part of the pilgrimage.
Thank you, Mark. And I would ask that, we do keep in our hearts and in our prayer all, what did you say, about 180? About 180 persons were registered and at one point or another came in and out of our pilgrimage, and just to keep one another in prayer, though we may not know each other, may never see each other. God knows who they are. God knows who we are. So I would just like to ask, is there one more person that would like to have the final word? Going once, going twice, going.
Thank you. I'm ringing in from Senegal, from West Africa. And as I said to Mark, I just wanted to thank you, sister, and your sisters and all of you for allowing us to make this pilgrimage with you. And for me, the timing really was providential. The Sundays allowed me a chance to stop and to be quiet and to reflect, and not just to reflect and learn about your history, but also to think about the time when people had this fervor to spread the faith, post the French Revolution, and thinking about turbulent times and living in turbulent times. So blessings to you all. And now when I go to I hope to get to Lyon someday. And now I have another reason to not just go to the university, but to go visit your special places there. It really, I'm a Chicagoan and I frequent the Senegal there, but I work in Africa. And so whenever I'm home, it's a go-to place for me. So this really was wonderful. And I'm going to say hello to Helen, and Sister Annalie might be on it too. So thank you all. And thank you so much. Know that what your gift that you gave us really touched my heart. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. So know that it was worth the effort. And Mark, your form was fine. I'm very low tech. So just getting on Zoom and following the thing was really progress for me. So it's not your form. Thank you, sister. Thank you.
I wanted to share a story with you, but then I felt, no, maybe I ought not to, but it's set in my heart, so I'm going to share it. And if you don't want to listen to it, it's been good to be with you. But when I made my international renewal in 1983, I discovered while we were in Rome that I had a tumor on my right breast. And of course, I was frightened. I was not in my own country, didn't know any doctors, no one spoke the language. And so one of the sisters, Margot, she was our co-director, she made an appointment for me with Dr. Jeans, who was from England, but she, so that I could go to her. Anyway, after a series of tests, I was told, we don't know if it's benignant or is benign or whether it's malignant. So best go home and find out. And I felt, I can't make that decision now. Ignatius of Loyola says, never make a decision when you're in either high or low. And so anyway, I decided after having a good cry, many good cries, I was going to go through with my international renewal. And when we got to Lyon, and we each had time in Mother Teresa's room. We were 13 sisters, so we had all the time we could possibly want. I remember taking her cane and pressing it against my breast and saying, Mother, I know you know suffering, and I am now. And I just beg of you, if it's God's will, would you ask him to heal me? Would you please pray for me? To make a long story short, I never touched my rest after, I was not going to doubt that my prayer wasn't heard. And so when I arrived back in Boston, where I was at the time in community, and went to the doctor, the surgeon, that was going to remove the tumor, I brought back with me from Rome the x-rays and all the test results. Well, because the time was so close, he felt no need to retake all these, x-rays, etc. So on August 15th, I find myself in an operating room, and I'm going to have a biopsy taken. No, not a biopsy, remove the tumor. Now they had the x-rays on the wall. They could see the tumor, and I could with my eyes. I'm not medical at all. And so anyway, they gave me everything they were going to give me. And so they started the surgery, but they could not find the tumor. And I was neither here nor there. I wasn't in a deep sleep. I was in a sleep similar to what they give you when you go for a colonoscopy. So anyway, the doctor kind of shrugged me, woke me up and said, "Are you awake?" "Yes, I'm awake." "Show me where the tumor is." And so I did. And they looked and they looked and they looked. And he said, "Sister, we cannot find the tumor, but I'm going to do a biopsy anyway." And that's when he did the biopsy, and it came back benign. For me, that deepened the love I already had for Mother Teresa. And so I feel indebted to her. I feel a privilege to share her love for her God, her love for community, and her self-surrender. Whether or not I attained complete self-surrender, it allows me to be in her company, because day after day, we all struggle with surrendering, what we want, from the littlest thing of a glass of milk or a glass of juice to something so very profound. So that, coupled with the time I spent with Mary Lou Moore when I was in the process of transferring from my former congregation to the Cenacle, just helped me to love Father Term very much. And she wrote her doctoral thesis on Father Term. It's called Term Priest, and I'm sure all of you, most of you, are acquainted with it, have read it, maybe even know it well. But I had the privilege of reading her thesis chapter by chapter, and then she wanted my opinion. Well, as someone who was just learning what Cenacle spirituality was, I was just in complete awe. And so I always thank God for her, because she was such an inspiration for me. And as far as our story in the United States, she always told me she regretted that she had not been able to really sit down and write the story of our development of our Cenacle in its foundation years especially. And with her, I've done that. And I am just so grateful. And Paul de Lassus, when I was in Lyon, and those of you who went to Lyon when she was still living, she was just a beautiful image of love, humility, and such a deep love for Mother Teresa. And I had the opportunity to be with her on several occasions during our times there. And also, when I made my international renewal, she gave us a whole week workshop on Mother Teresa's spirituality. So I feel akin to Mother Teresa in a way I can't express, but it gives me so much joy to share her story, which is our story. And so thank you for being with me today, and for being with Mark, for being with one another. And tomorrow morning at 7:30 a.m. my time, I don't know what time it is in Singapore, but I'm meeting with the associates in Singapore to give them what we're having today, because they're obviously still sleeping, most of them. So thank you, God bless you, and I hope I meet you again.